Good evening, everybody, and welcome into the Nerd Ensemble. I am... Oh, that's right. Theme music. Welcome in, everybody, to tonight's episode of the Nerd Ensemble. I'm one of your co-hosts, Don Kovac, and I'm here with my awesome co-host, Mr. Brett Dean. Brett, how are you?
Good, Don. Pretty good.
Good. We've found some new theme music. We're gonna have to get used to integrating that into the show. Brett, good find, man, on that. Glad you're doing well, and thank you all for tuning in and checking out this newest episode. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. We've had iCloud issues today. Both of us have experienced that. We've learned a lot more about the new iPhone SE3, the iPad Air 5, the Mac Studio and Studio Display. We've got some other news along the electronics front that Brett's going to talk to us about. And oh my gosh, there's probably so much more that we can get into. So we're going to kick it off with an issue that affected a lot of Apple users today. iCloud issues across the board. According to this article, thanks to Mac Rumors right here, all sorts of systems were down. The App Store, iCloud, Siri, iMessage, iTunes Store, Apple Maps, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, Apple Arcade, Apple Fitness Plus, Apple TV Plus, Find My, FaceTime, Notes, Stocks, and many, many others. Developer.apple.com was down, as well as a lot of Apple's back-end business software, literally causing some employees to have to do work on paper. Weird. So the first update went out around 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, which is 12:30 p.m. our time here, and several things were noticed to be working. A couple hours later, some systems were restored for some folks, and Apple sent a notice about 2 hours later that all systems were apparently back on. But interestingly, I don't know about you, but all of a sudden my phone was acting janky, and then I did a hard restart, and then I had to start signing back into iCloud and iMessage and all these different services during that time. Though that device was the biggest affected, the MacBook Pro that I'm talking to you all from still can't apparently sign into iCloud services. So that's fun.
So I had a ton of issues with Apple Music today. I'm a big Apple Music user, to the point where the software itself didn't seem to be working correctly. Not that I couldn't click on something and access it, but the software itself wasn't working right, which makes me all the more think that it's, and I don't know to what degree it is, but that it's just like a web portal app. It's not a localized app. A lot of it is just stuff that's pulling right down dynamically off the internet. And to the point I couldn't even type into the search field today. It was just giving me warning beeps every time I typed. And
interesting.
That was a giant pain in the butt.
I can imagine. Yeah. It came out of left field. Certainly, no more information has been available in terms of what caused the hack. So it'll be interesting to see over the next few days what comes to light on this. But hopefully by tomorrow, everything will be working normally for everybody. Because as I said, this MacBook Pro is still acting funny and still can't properly access iCloud and other services.
When we talk about an iCloud outage, and how many people do you think that affects? Because we're not living in the days anymore where, Apple is only the Mac user base, and that's, 10% of the computing population. What are we talking here? Like, what are the numbers of people that don't have access to their stuff?
That's a great question. Certainly, if any of you were experiencing iCloud issues today, please don't hesitate to let us know on our Facebook page, just to kind of get a sense of who all was affected and to what extent. I would say because of how public and how many services this affected, I would think this affected a lot more people than your average outage. Hence why it made such big news. So yeah, I would agree. I think this one was probably a bigger one than we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so that was kind of the big one that sort of was a bit frustrating and still is to some degree today. We've learned some more about the iPhone SE3. According to some teardowns that have been done by a variety of outlets, as rumored, but as confirmed here, the third generation iPhone SE does feature a larger battery and the Snapdragon X57 modem, so not quite the top of the line as you would find in the iPhone's 13, but a more powerful and more efficient modem to go along with that 5G service that is now included in it, plus a 2018 milliamp hour battery compared to an 1821 milliamp hour battery in the previous version. So they claim an extra 10 hours extra of audio playback, which is a nice little jump compared to the previous model. So it'll be interesting to see how that works in practice.
It's amazing that a device that's form factor has been around since the iPhone 6, that there's any more space that they can cram to get any more ounce of battery in there. You know, it's you'd think with a design that exhausted that they would have reached the absolute limits of it, but still they find a way. You know, something shrinks and they don't leave that space. They jump right in there and they use it for something else. It's pretty interesting engineering.
And if I read correctly, I believe that the device is actually a little bit thicker than the previous device. So that may definitely help to... You're right. You're 100% right in terms of whenever there is space freed up inside their phones, they will find a way to use it. But they're also showing us that they are willing to make the phones thicker in order to accommodate a larger battery. So that may play into it as well. So that's really nice to see. And certainly the SE is a great value at $429, even an extra $30 compared to the previous model. But you are getting more for that $30. So definitely an encouraging sign from Apple. I'll tell you, man, last thing on iPhone here, the more that I use this little guy, the more sad I'm going to be next year this year when they don't release an update.
It's made that much of an impact on you. So having a small phone is...
Man, I would have never thought it. And I kind of had remorse the first 2 days or so. Nope. Yeah. No, I love the thing. I love it.
And you don't miss any of the pro features?
Nope. I never. Okay. I mean, I've never had promotion on my iPhone, so I'm not missing that because I've never had it. I don't really miss it that much coming from the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros back to my 13-inch. I don't even notice it on my iPad anymore. Yeah. So, and the camera stuff just isn't that important to me.
Wild. Okay.
So yeah,
I did not know that about you. I would have pegged you for a camera junkie.
I keep pegging myself as that too, and as it turns out, I'm really not. But for those of you that are total camera nerds, go with it. But you just can't beat this size, in my opinion. So
well, what if it does live on, Don? What if that becomes the new iPhone SE?
I'm not. If it's got Face ID, color me interested. If it doesn't, no thanks. It's Face ID for bust for me. But anyway, that's enough on iPhone for tonight. A couple of things. A lot of the reviews for the 5th generation iPad Air have come out middle of last week. And so far, it's kind of the same old story, even alongside of last year's iPad Pro models. Sure, it's got an M1. It's fast. It's just as fast as the M1 iPads and M1 Max, of which you and I both sport. What are they going to do with it? Certainly the camera's not as good as the Pros. It doesn't have ProMotion like the Pros. It starts at 64 gig, which is basically inexcusable in 2022. And to jump up to the 256 gig model, which is the only other option, you're going up $150. So now you are in 11-inch iPad Pro territory. The 11-inch iPad Pro has ProMotion, has a better camera with LiDAR, has the full 4-speaker system, has the closer to the screen, closer to the glass screen. It has center stage, and it's got, I said, ProMotion. So I mean, it's the only thing it's really and Face ID. Can't forget Face ID. They both take Apple Pencil too. Some are speculating this is a move away from the 11-inch. Early estimates said that the 11-inch was going to gain the same mini LED display as the 12.9-inch this year. More recent rumors have said no, it's not, which makes you wonder if it's even going to get an update this year. So this is kind of where the iPad has moved to now in terms of what are they doing? And we're not sure.
It's really hard to pin down. So I was surprised by the inclusion of the M1 on this. Why? Because this isn't even like a prosumer device. This is supposed to be like the main family iPad kind of thing. Wouldn't you say? Yeah, it's like if you're going to have one, this is the one you have. It's very capable. It can do just about anything. But then they shocked the world and put an M1 in it, which kind of, for iPad level devices, that's a very, oh, shush, Siri. No, I'm not talking. Not talking to you anyway. It's just shocking that they would do this. Here's the theory going around. Tell me if you've heard this one.
Go for it.
The theory going around is that because of the chip shortage, because of lingering effects of the pandemic and now the war in Europe, that the M1 is the chip they have plenty of, and the A series chips, especially the newly fabricated ones. See, the M1 is based on an older generation, which we talked about last week. Of A series chips. That doesn't mean it's slower. It just means it's built on that architecture, and then it's increased in size to the point where the performance can power more powerful devices. So they don't have as many of, say, an A15 chip as they do M1s, because M1s are in production. That particular fabricating process is used to make the chips for MacBook Airs, iPad Pros, 24-inch iMacs, Mac Minis, the 13-inch MacBook Pro. So that chip is everywhere. They need all the A series chips they can because they're the exact right size performance ratio to go in an iPhone. They need to be directly going to iPhones. And so that's the reason this thing got an M1 chip. The consumer,
I
in a
have
sense,
heard that.
kind of lucked out because of the supply constraints going on right now. In the future, will it continue to have an M series chip? I don't think you can go back now. I mean, once you put an M1 in this thing, could you imagine if they said the next iPad Air has like an A17 chip in it in a few years? You know, that could potentially bum a lot of people out. Mm-hmm. So they are kind of stuck with it now, for better or for worse. But I just wonder, like, what are you doing with all that power in that device? Okay? All right, so as I'm looking at their promotional videos or website over there on the right, is anybody making massive amounts of keynotes with this thing? You know, that's what you have a MacBook Air for. You know, that's what you have your work device for. What do you need that M1 for? Is it for playing games? Are there enough high quality, graphics intensive games that are designed to use what the M1 has to put it in there? I don't know. I don't know the answer to any of that.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I can think of straight away. That and gaming and really 3D intensive apps. I don't know who's using it, but people must be. Procreate, things like that. It's probably much better with that M1 in it. So we'll see. I'm actually planning to take one for a test drive, just to see what it feels like. And I wouldn't be surprised, and I'll leave it on this, is if there's something big coming in iPadOS 16 here in June. If they don't, I feel like we can go ahead and really start betting against the iPad even more than we are now, in terms of it being a pro device and being a Mac replacement. So,
right, because people out there in technology land, if your chips are the same in your devices, and then let's check out a very nicely spec'd iPad Air, shall we? We got to get that turquoise blue. That is a killing blue. Let's get the 256er. Let's just stay with Wi-Fi because that's what a MacBook Air would have. All right, and then plus let's add.
Are you in the education store?
No, I'm in the regular one.
Gotcha.
There's no engraving. Sorry, I didn't pick that option. Yeah, we got to have an Apple Pencil. That's why you get it. Let's throw a little...
And you just got one, too, right, for your first time?
I don't have an Apple Pencil, no.
Oh, I thought, okay. I thought I remember you saying
Okay,
that.
so we're at 978, so we're within spitting distance of having a MacBook Air with the same chip. Mm-hmm. But why wouldn't you get the iPad Air over the MacBook Air, Don?
It's not as capable. It's just not as capable for getting work done. For
and not
gaming,
not because of the hardware, but because of the
software. The software,
yeah, for sure,
has a long way to go. And that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of diehard iPad users that are talking about a big change coming if iPadOS 16 doesn't really start beefing up background tasks, better file access, better switching between apps. A lot of these tasks that make working on a Mac better than working on a iPad. So
yeah, check that out.
We'll hit that up more as we go along. Yeah, I mean it's and
for
then
the same storage.
That's education, right?
No, that's the
no. Oh, that's right. They dropped them. Yeah, so $8.99 for. Are you sure? That's pretty cheap. Yeah, you're in the education store.
Am I? How do you know?
Yeah, because it says at the top left.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Because I'm like, those prices are even too low.
Sorry, world.
No, but I mean,
anyway, it's
fortunately for Brett and I, we have that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, for $8.99 versus $9.79, there's not a whole lot that the iPad can do better than that MacBook Air.
Mm-hmm.
Although to be noted, the iPad Air does have the 8-core GPU, not the 7-core.
Ah.
No binning, no broken cores there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's enough on the iPad Air. Perhaps more to come as time goes along.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with your assessment. It's a great family iPad, a great media iPad, playing around gaming iPad, no
Mm-hmm.
doubt. So let's move over to the Mac Studio because, oh yeah, there's those beautiful green colors. Cool. Nothing else needs to be said there. So the Mac Studio, and this is where it's starting to become more real, particularly for Mr. Grumpy Old Man right there. Is as far as a lot of the benchmarks and tests that I've seen from various reviewers, that is just as powerful as the M1 Max in your 14-inch MacBook Pro.
Mm-hmm.
The 16 might gets a little bit more than the 14 because it has a little bit more cooling. But what we're finding is because of the way they built the Mac Studio, the Max version of the Mac Studio, is not really being unleashed, given that it is in a desktop form versus in a laptop form.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not surprising, because that's not really what Apple does. But it is a little bit shocking to me because the cooling system is built primarily to handle double that, the M1 Ultra. So it's really curious to me to see why aren't they really upclocking it a little bit, overclocking it, because it's got a better cooling system and it is in a desktop. Yes, it's definitely a huge power saving from any Intel computer, no doubt about it. But for some of those times where you're running a huge workflow and you would like just a little extra horsepower, it doesn't really seem to be coming. What do you think about that?
It's a little disconcerting. It almost makes you want to wait for a Gen 2 version of it. But with Apple, the problem is we just don't know when a Gen 2 will be, if ever. You know what I mean? Like, this might be it for 3 years. We don't know their update cycle, especially on a brand new product. So
It's true.
And it's not, because it's not a portable, the pressure's not on to get it as right. Each year of those butterfly key MacBooks, they got progressively better, and then they determined, nah, this is a dead end. We're going to go back to and make the best scissor switch keyboard.
Scissor switches, yep.
Yeah, that we can. Because the other one, we got it as good as we could. It's still not good enough. Gone. Okay? And that was a year-over-year thing. First year, they had the awful one. Second year, they had the little rubber things around the edges. Third year, I don't know, they did something else to it that gave it a little more height, because I think people were asking for that, plus the rubber things. And then a couple years later, that was gone. They gave up on it. But with the Mac Studio, as long as the performance is still pretty good, I don't know that they're going to touch it. Like next year, do they pop an M2 in it or whenever that comes out? I don't know.
That's a good question. And to be honest, I don't think that's going to fix what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. It's not it's a hardware decision by Apple to go that direction. Why they're what they're essentially saying is you get an M1 Max computer and it's going to work like an M1 Max computer.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not a massive variability between the 14-inch Pro to the 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1
Yeah.
to the Studio.
I'm surprised that with the fan system in there, that's not yet somehow better than the cooling system in the 16-inch MacBook Pro that gives it that little bit of an edge. So, I mean, it was like negligibly better if I remember right. Am I right about that? The 16-inch MacBook Pro was like just a tiny bit better than the Mac Studio with the same chip.
Though the reviews I've seen, they compared a 14 with the M1 Max versus the Studio. Okay. So yes, the 16 should be better than the 14. But it's a choice. Now, where it comes to you, sir, I do believe that particularly for video work, as you do a good amount, the M1 Max is going to be a big boost over your Intel iMac because of the built-in video encoders on the M1 Max chip. And we're working with Final Cut, which you do. I do believe you would see a really, really nice boost working with video on your...
I think you're probably right, and that's why it's still in the running. You know, I went on and on last time about I think the price is a little bit high for what you're getting, and if you had told me last week, if you had piled on with that information about it, you know, not utilizing the desktop form factor to any great advantage, then I might have been even more pissed off. But I think what we're going to have to get over is the way these chips are designed, and we can see that from them dumping M1s in everything, and then the performance is exactly the same as it is on an iPad Air, as it is on a iMac 24-inch, as it is on a... you know what I mean? Like, we're going to have to get over the fact that a chip is a chip now, at least when we're dealing with Apple Silicon, and we don't really have desktop chips and laptop chips anymore. It's like, whatever it gets announced as in its newest incarnation the first time, so like whenever the M2 comes out, that's the single core speed we're going to see throughout that entire generation.
Yes.
Now they might increase the size of the chip, and that's where they're getting the performance boost for the Pro models and things like that. But like the chip is the chip, and there's not going to be like clock speed variation there.
No, it appears that whatever level of chip that you get, it's going to be a similar performance no matter where the chip is, like you're saying. And I think that's nice in terms of it's predictable. So yeah, it's going to be curious to see. There were rumors that this past event was supposed to feature the first M2 devices, and they were scrapped pretty late in the game. So it's very... I mean, it seems like debuting the M2 would be good for WWDC, because they did say that, like we talked about last time, this is the M1 Ultra is the last bit in the M1 generation. So whatever is going into the Mac Pro is maybe an M2 generation chip. So it'll be interesting to see how they frame that. But I do think, with all things considered, I do think an M1 Max would be plenty of horsepower for you. It is something that you could keep for quite a while. And then if you decide to go ahead and then sell it to upgrade later, I do think it's going to hold its value even more so than an comparable Intel Mac. especially depending on the release cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So, it seems like it's great. It's just this little bit of kind of question that was hanging out there for the most part, at least now, has been solved. I mean, you can't beat that connectivity. On the Men 1 Max, 4 Thunderbolt, 2 USB-C, 2 USB-A, HDMI 2.0, not 2.1, unfortunately. The high res audio jack and 10 gig Ethernet. I mean, that's a lot of connectivity.
It's not bad. I'll be honest with you. That's a lot of reviewers have been saying over the last week. Ports are back. Ports won. And I'll be honest. I don't think you would have seen this computer 2 years ago with Johnny Ive.
No, this was a response to way back in 2017 when they held that roundtable event, discussion type thing. The Pro Workflows team is doing the work here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you compare this to a comparable Mac Pro, yeah, I mean this is going to be way more affordable than a Mac Pro. Speaking of which, something that you brought up in the pre-show that's interesting is rumors were that that the SSDs, because they are not actually a part of the board, a part of the system on a chip here, that they would be upgradable. And according to what I've learned today, they are not. You can physically replace them by getting deep inside of the computer. But Mac OS is blocking any upgrades in that department. We don't yet really fully know why. We just know that that's where it's at, and what sort of reasoning Apple gives is going to be sort of telling to what the truth is.
They've done this lots. It's not a huge shocker. They've had for eons and eons and eons. They've had ports and things that appear to be accessible, things that seemingly could be replaced, but you can't. It's their MO. If I had to guess, it's maybe because they don't have 100% assurance that the drive won't fail at some point. They don't maybe have a full scope of the thermals, or like how is it going to perform after 4 years. They don't know that information yet. So were the drive to go, you could take it in under warranty or with Apple Care or whatever, and maybe get that replaced, and then they don't have to scrap the whole thing or replace the entire motherboard. That's my guess. I don't know. I think they want to keep it as a possible repair option for themselves. That's my thought anyway.
Certainly, yes. The conspiracy theorist hat can come out real good for this, because they called it modular in the presentation. And so far as we can tell, the only thing modular about it is you can put different displays with it. And that is not what a lot of us geeks and nerds would like to think of as modular, that we can swap SSDs. We can upgrade other things, add, video cards or other things to additional storage to beef up what you've got. And
so speaking of modular, what do you expect for the Mac Pro? I don't care as much as I used to, because the Mac Pro is completely a different beast than 10 years ago in that who it's designed for.
Right.
I mean, it's designed for like movie studios with that need to render the next DreamWorks movie. They're the people buying these things.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta say, I still like that design a lot. It is a really hip looking design. You know what I mean? I hope they're able to utilize it and keep it around. But just look what's here. Look how big the chip is. The chip block. And then here are the graphics cards taking up huge amounts of space. The Mac Studio proves that to get a high performance piece of Apple hardware now, you don't need that kind of space. So what are they going to do? Do you feel like they're going to lose this design even though it's essentially brand new? And if they don't lose it, what are they going to use all that space for? There are a lot of really smart technology geeks out there that get paid to do what we're doing now, that say, like they're not even sure like PCI will work with it. Some of the standard interfaces. So what are they going to use all that space for? And what do you think the next Mac Pro is going to look like, Don?
I don't think it's going to be anywhere near that big because it doesn't have to be. I can't imagine they would allow GPUs to be replaced. The only thing I can really imagine is storage. Because that's kind of where we're at. And they pushed it here. Let's be clear. As much as we love Apple, we're not going to call a spade a club. Apple pushed computer design here.
Mm-hmm.
The lack of repairability. They've been hauled into court multiple times. They've made some movements in this area.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not... We're not... I don't think we're going to have anywhere near this amount of upgradability or swappability in a Mac Pro. It certainly doesn't need that much cooling. You're not going to be able to put in a Radeon Pro 6700 into it or whatever. So that's a big piece of the cooling. And of course, because it's going to be running Apple Silicon and not Intel, it's not going to need anywhere near as much cooling.
I just had a crazy thought. What if, for certain kind of clientele that has really expensive software, that their company licenses out, what if the damn thing runs Mac or Apple Silicon and Intel?
That's an idea. I can't imagine it, but it's an idea because that would certainly allow you that modularity, as we were discussing before, to swap storage or add additional storage, add additional RAM, add additional graphics stuff.
Where it's essentially two computers in one. But Apple finds a way for it to all talk together,
Right. That would be very surprising, to be honest with you. I would be... Because
I'm thinking of like old rendering software. You know what I mean? Like stuff that movie companies use and stuff like that might be optimized for Intel. And, maybe it's gotta still have it in there somewhere, Yeah,
not to mention that the M1 Ultra can't get up to 60 teraflops. It just can't. And it's hard to imagine, from what I heard, it's hard to imagine even a quad die M1 Max thing, whatever they would call it, like getting up to that level of power.
Yeah.
And let's keep in mind that a huge component of the speed of Apple Silicon devices is because it's self-contained on a chip. The RAM, everything is all there. So when you're starting to integrate, these components, you're losing that built-in advantage. So yeah, man. I mean, at this point, I don't think it's very likely, but I think it's possible because then they do need to keep this case. And all of the work that they do. I mean, they knew what they were doing when they put this computer out. They knew what was coming.
And it kind of, if they do go that route of like a dual architecture thing, you could put one of these AMD Ryzen chips in there instead of an Intel chip, and go with the absolute top end of the x86 world. You could do that, and really, it kind of fills the gap of where Apple can't go. So it would almost be like the way a hybrid car works, where like the Apple Silicon would get you up to a certain point, and then maybe at some point that Ryzen coupled with a Radeon Pro kicks in and gets you up to the extreme high end that you need. And Apple did say for years to come they would still be building Intel things. Well, so far, the only computer that they ever upgraded past that point was the one I'm using. Because this is the only one to get introduced after the announcement of the M1 chips. Everything else is sat idle. The Mac Mini with Intel chips, the Mac Pro's just got slight speed bumps, So I wonder if that's it. It's also kind of disappointing though, if after these huge like initial performance gains that led Apple to brag so hard, that they can't quite get up to the pro range of things. You know what I mean? That would be kind of sad. It's kind of like winning the race right up until the end as the rabbit, and then the tortoise beats you. Slow and steady.
Yeah. You're right. It's going to be interesting to see, and it's the latest rumors say that the new Mac Pro isn't coming until 2023, so next year still. So we've got some time. If that is true, then we've got some time before that's going to come into play. Anyway, I think that's enough about the Mac tonight. We'll definitely continue having this conversation, and I think we'll learn a lot more after WWDC. On the studio display side of things, this was another big conversation that Brett and I had some back and forth going on this past week. And the reviews weren't great overall, at least in certain areas. But ultimately, in terms of the homework that I did, it's not as great as we would expect, but it's still better than a lot of the competition. And so most reviews that I have read have said you should get it, particularly for Apple Silicon. But it will still work with Apple Macs with Intel, too. So that's important to note. They did create some backwards compatibility there, which is great. And it even works with Windows, too, if that's your bag, too. It's 600 nits of brightness, so brighter even than your iMac by 100 nits. It is not high dynamic range, because high dynamic range requires at least 1,000 nits of brightness. But its color reproduction is better overall, according to what I've seen, than the not the Pro Display, definitely not the Pro Display, the ultra fine 5K display. There's work to go on the camera. There's no doubt. When we're used to seeing that center stage camera on a phone or a tablet size display, and now spreading that out over a 27-inch display. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done with white balancing, with the graininess of it, a lot of noise. And they claim that they're working on it. Don't buy a display based on a claim that they're working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Not as good as we were expecting, but overall, for a Mac user and an Apple user, it's still the best choice.
Yeah, I've come to that conclusion after a week of looking at alternatives, because especially once after you start adding things up, you get right back to the cost of the studio display, which if you're always intellectually honest with yourself, that's why it's okay to land back on what looks like a more expensive Apple product. Take it from somebody who's had a little bit of everything over the years. You keep coming back because performance and longevity and all of the features that are integrated into an Apple product, and including the studio display, ultimately end up justifying the price. And that's why I reject the notion that Apple is a strictly luxury brand. It's just a good brand. It's Apple's making stuff that works, and a lot of other people aren't. So, in that sense, I don't think it's a luxury to have a screen that's got a built-in webcam. That just makes sense.
Right.
I don't think it's a luxury to have a computer that uses less power for better performance. That's why we have turbochargers in cars. It's just smart. As time rolls on, these things become expected, and that's why, well, yes, you can get a $499 4K monitor, that doesn't have a webcam, that doesn't have speakers, that doesn't have this or that. But if having good quality stuff that you will be able to keep as long as you take care of it almost indefinitely matters to you, then that's why that price always ends up, in a lot of cases, even being less than what you pay in the long term buying stuff out of a cheaper ecosystem.
It's a fair point. That's a fair point, and
that doesn't mean we can't be disappointed about stuff.
No, of course not.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of money, and that's some sticker shock. And I know my own argument, like that. Oh yeah, it justifies itself in the end. I know that. I've lived with that for 30 some years, but yeah, we can still be disappointed about a camera that has a software bug. We can still be upset about that.
Yes. Apple touts itself to be amongst the best, if not the best. And so when they don't meet that standard, they deserve the criticism that goes with it. 100%. Mm-hmm. Good enough is not good enough if you are pricing yourself at the top of the market and you are the biggest company in the world. So there are rumors that there's going to be a Pro Studio display with mini LED and addressing some of this stuff coming as early as June. But then, of course, now we're talking probably another $1,000 at least.
Unless you just let this one ride for a couple of years to the point where mini LED comes down, and then that is the next incarnation of the studio display. It's like, for God's sakes, Apple, just have two, okay? Have the really expensive one, have the one for everybody else. We're good. Just let this thing ride.
What if they did do that, though? What if they had, it's not like they have just two styles of Mac, the
Mm-hmm.
slow one and the fast one.
Yeah.
What if they did do that? What if they really, really announced? I think it's crazy to think that at least 3 months after releasing this. But what if they did do that in 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got the really expensive one, the medium one, and then the entry level one. The good, better, best philosophy that Steve Jobs
Right.
touted so hard.
Right. It's. I know what I just got done saying, but it's still a hard pill to swallow. That somehow 15.99 is not better, at the minimum. I would hate for it to be the good option. I want mini LED to become the norm, so that
Well,
if you make the jump and you buy an Apple display at some point in a couple of years, that's what you're getting. Kind of like the way Retina displays originally took over. It's like, yeah, that first MacBook with Retina display was a little bit more, but eventually all of them got it.
well, who's to say that wouldn't happen here? There's
Yeah.
nothing to say that. Like if it debuts in a product that is, like look at the difference between the 13-inch MacBook Pro and the 14-inch MacBook Pro.
Mm-hmm.
All that technology difference, you're paying $1,000 more.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So like it's got to start somewhere. And in terms of the laptops, it did start at the high end. That first, like you're saying, that first 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro back in 2012 was a good $1,000 more than everything else out there. But once you laid eyes on that screen, you're just like, oh, I can't, I gotta have that,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think it's very possible that if it enters the market somewhere, it could make its way down. Then how do they differentiate that? Um, the good, better, best,
Size.
right? Could be that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what if that one was 30 inches? So here we have a 27-inch, a 30-inch, or 29-inch, or whatever it is, and then the 32 is
Mm-hmm.
the or what if that came in at 32, and then the Pro Display XDR and its revision goes up to 37, or
Or it becomes a widescreen 40, or something like that.
right.
So,
Because that's also in the pipeline, according to Gurman, for the next with by the end of next year too, is
what?
the Pro Display XDR replacement, upgrade.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant specifically a widescreen. I was like,
Well, I don't we don't
my heart
know
started
it.
beating.
According to the rumors, it's 7K.
Mm-hmm.
The current one
Well,
is 6K.
okay. However, that's like announcing a new McLaren. It's like, wow, that's super cool. I'm not getting it anytime soon. So,
Right, but it's got to start somewhere,
yeah.
and if you really, like you're saying, we want to see Apple innovating, we want to see Apple pushing the envelope. It's got to start somewhere. So yeah, so I still advocate that Brett gets one of these. I will be honest, I've looked around and tried to get my hand on one to take it for a test drive, the display. Um but they are hard to come by right now.
Super important question for you, sir. Which stand?
I don't believe the tilt and adjustable height adjustable stand is worth $400. I don't. I think that is utterly ridiculous. That should be the price of entry, because the stupid 5K ultra fine display for $300 less has a tilt and height adjustable stand on it initially. This is another one of those Apple premium brand, premium product
Yeah. And here's the thing I can't figure out.
upcharges.
And maybe somebody out there, if you're watching, maybe maybe Don, you could. I'm sure Don, you could help me figure this out. Okay, so the the height adjustment on the studio display, will this actually end up, if this thing is down, will it be any lower? Because that's what I want.
Yes.
I want
Yeah.
something that comes down further than my current iMac will set.
Yeah, it is lower. It is lower than your iMac.
Lower?
Just, yeah, with the regular stand, because of the lack of the chin, the display starts lower.
Okay, how about the height adjustable one? Is that only to get you extra height going up?
That should be able to go down.
Or will it be able to go a little lower too?
It should be able to go all the way down to at least be very close, if not exactly the same as the regular adjustable stand.
Okay, because I wish this thing were adjustable so that it could move like down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it can. It can.
Okay, so this little connection point right here, it can move down this way?
Yes, correct. How far I don't know, but it can. Yeah, see, look there.
Changes things.
See that?
Changes things. Yeah, but this looks very high up on here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but we don't know to what level that is. I just, from what I've heard from reviewers, because I don't think anybody actually got the height adjustable one, but the folks that have the XDR, the Pro Display XDR, that have that, have said it can get. But my critique is that I think it gets too low. I think it's too low, especially without the chin on there anymore. I think it's too low. I want them. That's why, to me, like I shouldn't have to spend $2,000 to not have to put my display on a stack of books or some fancy metal thing, that makes it look just as nice as the Pro Display. They haven't said that you can stick it on top of the Mac Studio. I don't see why you can't, if you want to go that route. All the pictures we've seen so far is it's on the side next to it. So, but to me, I think it's too low, and I think that it's really, really stupid that it. And of course, you can go with a Visa mount and go to town.
I was looking at some of the arms. They're hideous, and they look like a robot is going to attack me. You know what I mean? Like some of them are hideous. Now, this one isn't horrible. It's at least aluminum colored.
Yeah.
But oh my God, it's $295. You're back up to Apple money there.
So yeah, you're almost, unless you want the Visa mount where you can totally go crazy with it. And with the Visa mount, keep in mind, you can then turn it portrait if you'd like.
Yeah, you can.
You cannot do that with either of the other display options. And while I'm on that point, supposedly it came out today that supposedly you can bring your display into an Apple authorized service center and get the stand option changed. No pricing has been released. No turnaround has. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. They tell you to buy the one that you think you need from the start.
Probably because they don't want to do it. They don't want to spend Genius Bar or whatever they're calling it now time worrying about that stuff. But they know that, like, your college major, you should be able to switch it at some point if you want. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is not a bad looking Visa mount. I'm going to be honest with you. This is probably, you're my lucky charm here, Don, because I was finding a whole bunch of those hideous ones that look like Tony Stark's robot. You know what I mean? So that is not a horrible looking one. I'm still very curious to see how low that Apple made one goes, but I don't think I'm going to be able to. No one's gonna have like a front-ish picture where I can see it's just slightly to the side of it.
It's got to be about 8 inches because they can still fit the studio on. See, look in our little background picture. You can see there's a couple inches of height between the top of the Mac Studio, which is 7.7 inches tall.
Okay, that's pretty high.
Um,
yeah. Huh.
Unless I'm mistaking that.
No, I think you're
But
dead
I'm pretty
on.
sure
So
it's 7.7 inches.
okay.
Now, if you look at the pictures on, that we were looking at earlier on Apple.com, yeah, it's pretty close. So, I would guess about 27 inches. I'm sorry. 7.7 inches wide, 3.7 inches tall. So I would say 6 inches max from the desktop to the bottom of the display.
And everybody does seem to be in their review pictures angling the monitor upward some, so it can't be that high, Like even though it's sitting on a desk, everybody, but they're taller than me too. I'm not huge,
right?
So
you and I are similar heights.
I don't know.
So I mean, to me, I think it's too low. And if I were buying one, I would totally, as much as I hate it, I would totally be aiming for the tilt and height adjustable option.
Or would you consider a Visa mount, especially an attractive one like?
I would not, because I don't have a stationary desk.
Okay.
And I don't like just like I don't like mounting my TVs to the wall. I like the flexibility of putting it on a stand. I would also want the flexibility of putting this on a stand. But that's just me. Okay. I agree with you. That is a very good looking mount. And it's Herman Miller, so it's probably going to be very high quality.
Is Herman Miller good? I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah, Herman Miller makes like the best chairs in office chairs.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
They're really expensive. So
it's a $300 mount. Jesus.
Right. So imagine what the chairs are. So yeah. So still more to come here, but I think hopefully when Brett and I get a chance to get our hands on one, or at least look at one and kind of see what it looks like, we'll have a lot more to talk about when it comes to that. Did you want to go through that other thing that you wanted to talk through, or did you want to table it for now?
Let's table it for now, because we've gone through a lot for the people tonight, and then maybe we'll come back around. So we noticed that just about the most important company in OLED manufacturing released their new round of TVs. LG's got their lineup, but this gives Don and I a chance to dig into it a little bit this week and report back to you next time with what LG's up to, see if there's any big changes. If you're a technology nerd, you probably already have a B series or a C series at home. So oh, Siri, you are so uppity tonight.
Yeah, she's excited today.
Yeah. So, anywho.
Must be that steamy tech talk.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll get into that, and I think it would be kind of cool to venture outside. Now, of course, we'll have some more feedback on this new Apple stuff, but I think it would be good to kind of branch out a little bit outside of the Apple world a little bit, see what else is out there. You know what we haven't done in a long time either?
Car Corner,
which we called it something else, didn't we?
We did. It's totally not the Car Corner.
Yeah, but we'll call it that because we have to remember what it was that we called it that we liked so much. But of course, that's like the number one thing Brett and I talk about off of this show. So yeah,
vehicles.
So there's going to be lots to talk about. So hopefully we'll get to next week is our spring break, so it might be a little bit hard, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we might be able to do a remote if I'm somewhere and you're somewhere. That might be doable.
I am here. So this is going to be a staycation for me because I have a tiny human to prepare for.
Yeah, congrats again.
Thank you. So lots to do with that. This whole area behind me might look a lot different here soon. So we'll keep y'all updated on our Facebook page as to when we're recording next, and lots more nerdery to come. So thank you all for tuning in and interacting with us, and we will be with you very soon. And Brett, thanks for being awesome, buddy.
You too, man. All right.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, I want to do some music for the people.
Oh,
here
we got to do the outro music. Here we go.
It says it's going.
I don't hear it.
It's playing, but it's not very good.
I don't hear anything on my end. I heard it during the beginning. But
yeah, that's so bizarre. Goodbye, everybody. Bye.
Peace, everybody. Take care.